Hey, what's up, guys? Chase here with Chasing Tech. And in this video, I'm going to share with you an article I came across. It talks about how artificial intelligence could potentially undermine athletes' rights. It's this article I came across while I was researching how AI affects the future of sports. And I thought it was really interesting because a lot of the articles I came across we're talking about how AI will help the future of sports. It will increase the customization so people can have a more personal experience with sports. It'll help the narrators on live TV be able to give more compelling stories and information in real time. Referees will be more accurate. All these really good things about how AI is going to make the future of sporting way better and way more enjoyable. However, this article I came across is titled Artificial Intelligence in Sport Can Potentially Undermine Athletes' Rights. And it starts off explaining how AI is so widespread that most fields in professional sport are already embracing it, but their warning is that the unrestrained rise of AI can also undermine basic rights of athletes, which I thought was really interesting because if we think about AI and really what AI is, it's basically an algorithm, it's basically a software, it's a technology that makes certain decisions based off of the data that we feed it. And the key thing here, I think, is the data, because depending what the data is that is being fed to the AI, more specifically in machine learning, that's what's teaching the AI to behave in a certain way. So, number one, we have to make sure that machine learning is fair and equal. And this is probably something that gets more into political side of things, right? What sorts of rights athletes have, right? This gets really philosophical super quick, because what AI does is it takes all of these pieces of data that exist in the world today and it uses those to give decisions, help athletes make decisions, give them recommendations, and ultimately it can even be used to help sports teams make decisions on who they're picking on their team and who they're not. And so if an AI is potentially biased towards a certain group of people, then we have this problem where then AI is creating an inequality or a discrepancy of sorts in our society. So I understand where this article is coming from, and it's really caused me to start to think a lot about how that can be done. And I'm sure this will be a topic across every single domain in AI and technology, because basically, if you think about it, when we're giving AI the ability to make decisions, we're forfeiting our own right to make that decision, or we're at least giving a portion of that decision-making process to AI. So whether we, get an AI driven recommendation, or we're actually just trusting whatever AI is telling us to do, even when we get an AI driven recommendation, it might bias us in a certain direction and cause us to make a certain decision. So it is really important, I think, to start thinking about what types of data we're giving AI and how we're training AI through machine learning to make decisions and give us recommendations. Some of the specific examples that are in this article are, well, first of all, they highlight that sports has long been a field for testing new products, whether drugs or advanced technology, without considering the interests and welfare of athletes. To be honest, I don't know if that's founded in truth. I'm not really an expert in the sporting industry, but it does talk about how the fast and uncontrolled growth of artificial intelligence in sport does not only increase the risk of inequality and corruption and competition, it also jeopardizes the privacy and autonomy of athletes by exposing their personal data to the interests of trading firms. So this is going to be a really hot topic. I think it already kind of is. People are starting to wake up to, oh, my data is being used. Started with social media, which is why we see Apple basically getting rid of the whole cookie thing, where now advertisers on social media are not able to track us across multiple apps unless we let them. It's kind of the same thing here, right? Do athletes want to give their personal data to a AI company to make decisions and give them recommendations? I don't know. I think it might be a personal choice, but I haven't really thought that much about it. Also, with trading firms, like I mentioned, if trading firms are going to use data about you to make certain decisions, we really have to make sure that the data they're gathering and the decisions that are made on that data are equal and fair, and they really can capture the types of qualifications needed to selected as an athlete on a particular team. Obviously, sports, it's a very competitive field and it's about performance. And again, I'm not an expert in sports, so I don't really know how these trading firms are making decisions, or even personal trainers make decisions based off of data that they capture. But I do think that it's important for sure for us to be aware as a general community of people, but also for athletes to be aware of what it is that they're ready to allow and ready not to allow, so they can stand up for themselves and we can stand up for ourselves. Another thing that it said in this article is that also algorithms for improving performance are often based on biased data from elite athletes and could lead to physical and psychological collapse amongst children and young people who try to follow them. I personally thought that this statement I didn't necessarily agree with it, because sure, like kids have always followed what athletes do, right? You hear on TV what, Tom Brady does, or Steve Nash back in my day when I was a kid. People would try to do their routines and their exercises. So I don't think this really changes that, but maybe I'm just not understanding what they're talking about. Another thing that they said in this article is that the several biases these data contain only increase the patriarchal nature of sport, ignoring the serious risk they pose to the health of female athletes whose biology and differences when practicing sport have never been taken into account and are perpetuated through the patriarchal ancestry of AI. But I think the main point here is that the data we give AI drives the decisions that it makes, right? When we're training AI through machine learning, the data that we give it, it makes a difference in the results that we get on the other side. So being aware of this and making sure that this data is actually something that creates the right outcomes that we're looking for, I think that's what's important. And the main challenge I think they're highlighting through this is that AI is technology, right? And technology is controlled by people who are not the athletes. It's not controlled by the athletes because the athletes are experts in their sport, and the AI is controlled by experts in technology, right? That's their job. That's what they do. It's their business. So there needs to be a joint collaboration between, I would say, the athletes and the coaches and the technology experts who are creating this AI to create a mutual agreement about what is good, what is not good, and really what outcomes they're really trying to accomplish. So they wrap up this article and they say AI in sport should serve to reinforce the human values of sport, such as fair play and equality in competition. AI should ensure the integrity and good governance of the sport at the global level and deepen the social and educational side of sport rather than satisfy the financial interests of large technology firms. So again, this hits on the theme of what is the future of sporting supposed to look like, and how can we all agree, different groups of folks inside the sporting arena, whether it's the athletes or the coaches or the spectators or the technology firms that are creating AI to help in the sporting industry, what are the interests and what is the end goal that we're going after, so we can make sure that AI actually helps us accomplish goals in sporting, as opposed to maybe makes things more profitable but takes the quality down or makes it unfair. These are all things that need to be thought out. I'm not the guy with the answers, but I just thought this article was super interesting. It is something we should also be thinking about, because AI can be used for such great things, and I would just hate for it to be given a bad rap because it's misused or it's rolled out too quickly and not given enough thought and precaution put in place to support the true interests of the sporting community.